Cities are built on order, streets, grids, and symmetry, but every so often a single block kind of breaks the rules. These are places where geometry bends, architecture experiments, or nature quietly takes over, from glowing intersections and vertical labyrinths to ancient stepwells and forests hidden in concrete. Here's 15 of the strangest city blocks in the world. Starting with number 15, Gonzalo de Carvalo Street in Brazil. In the port city of Porto Alegre, in Brazil, a single block stands out as one of the strangest urban spaces in the world. And it's unexpectedly beautiful. It's an ordinary residential street by design, running through the Independencia neighborhood. But what makes this block remarkable is the dense canopy of trees that completely engulfs it, turning the street into what locals call the most beautiful street in the world. More than 100 tipuana trees line the block, forming a continuous green tunnel that stretches for several hundred meters. It was planted in the 1930s by German immigrants who lived in the area. These trees have grown to immense heights, some over 20 meters tall. And from above, the block looks like a river of green that cuts through a gray city. It's often described as an urban forest corridor, but technically it's just an ordinary city block. In 2006, when developers planned to construct a shopping center nearby, residents protested to protect the trees. That movement gained national attention, and the street was declared a historical, cultural, ecological, and environmental heritage of the city. This is a rare status that means it's protected not as a park, but as a city block, preserving the infrastructure and the nature here in a balanced way. The canopy lowers the surface temperature by several degrees compared to nearby blocks. It reduces air pollution and improves humidity. Yet the design wasn't deliberate. It evolved naturally over the decades, with residents planting and caring for the trees long before sustainability became a goal. Images from above often mislead the first-time viewers into thinking that it's a forest reserve or a natural road, but this green tunnel is entirely urban. Gonzalo de Carvalo Street remains one of the strangest and most famous examples of a city block that's become an ecological anomaly in the middle of a major Brazilian city. Number 14, the Flatiron Block in New York City. At the intersection of 5th Avenue, Broadway, and East 22nd Street in Manhattan is one of the strangest shaped city blocks in the world, the Flatiron Block. This narrow, wedge-shaped piece of land looks almost impossible to build on, yet it's home to one of New York's most iconic structures, the Flatiron Building. It was completed in 1902. The triangular plot's only about 6.5 feet wide at its narrowest point, tapering sharply as the street meets at an angle of about 25 degrees. The block shape wasn't a deliberate design. It was a byproduct of the city's irregular street grid, where Broadway cuts diagonally across Manhattan's rectangular plan. Architect Daniel Burnham's challenge was to fit a full-size office building onto this sliver of land, and what he produced became one of the first steel-frame skyscrapers in the world. Wind currents here at the intersection create another weird situation. The shape funnels the gusts upwards along 5th Avenue, famously causing the early 20th century pedestrians to gather just to watch women's skirts billow in the breeze, a phenomenon that newspapers at the time called 23 Skidoo. It's one of the few urban places where every inch of land is used efficiently, yet the result looks accidental. From above, it looks like a slice missing from Manhattan's otherwise ordered layout, and it's a reminder that even rigid city grids have quirks that turn into icons. Few city blocks can show how accidental geometry can reshape architectural history as clearly as this one. Number 13, Nakajin Capsule Tower Block in Japan. In Tokyo Shimbashi District, one small city block has captured the future that never came. The Nakajin Capsule Tower, completed in 1972, stood on a compact lot at the intersection of two streets in Ginza. The tower and its single-block footprint were built on the principles of metabolism, a radical Japanese architectural movement that imagined cities as living organisms capable of growth and renewal. What made this so strange was the composition of it. 140 prefabricated capsules, each measuring about 10 square meters. They were bolted individually to two central concrete cores. Each capsule functioned as a self-contained apartment or office, equipped with a bed, small bathroom, and a built-in TV and stereo. The idea was that the capsules could be replaced or rearranged as needed, allowing the building to regenerate over time. Yeah, that never happened. The tower remained in its original 1970s form, with aging capsules deteriorating and becoming obsolete. For decades, the block appeared surreal, each capsule's porthole window staring out into the dense surrounding streets like something from a science fiction set. By the 2010s, most residents had moved out, and the building had fallen into decay, and it was ultimately demolished in 2022, ending one of Tokyo's most fascinating urban experiments. Even in absence, the block is one of the strangest in modern urban history, and it shows that innovation can even make a single city block feel like a different world. Number 12. The Piazza del Campo block in Italy. In the medieval city of Siena, Italy, one city block defies almost every conventional rule of urban design. It's known as the Piazza del Campo. It's not a square at all, but a shell-shaped block that slopes gently downward towards a central point, like a shallow amphitheater. It was originally built in the 13th century. It was constructed on the site where three hilltop settlements merged to form the city. Instead of following the rigid rectangular grid that was common to later developments, Siena's planners created a fan-like form divided into 9 sections, each one representing the city's medieval governing councils. But what makes it strange is that every summer, it transforms into the venue for the Palio di Siena, a bareback horse race dating back to the 1600s. The race takes place around the perimeter of the block while thousands of spectators crowd into the center. No other city block in the world has a layout so perfectly accommodated to both everyday life and a centuries-old sporting event. From above, you can see the block's curved outline resembles a scallop shell, giving it a natural appearance within an otherwise densely built city. The slope of the block and its perfect drainage system were engineering achievements of their time. The rainwater runs down the paving stones into the center drain, which connects to Siena's ancient aqueducts. The entire design, part practical and part symbolic, makes this an unusual example of medieval planning. Few other city blocks in the world have maintained both that original purpose and geometry for over 700 years. The Piazza del Campo, as it was intended, a gathering place, a racetrack, and a civic landmark, shaped more like a living organism than a man-made square. Number 11. The Kowloon walled city block in Hong Kong. Maybe no city block in history has been stranger or more chaotic than the Kowloon walled city in Hong Kong. For decades, this single block functioned as an autonomous, densely packed vertical labyrinth, completely unlike any other urban space on the planet. It occupied about the size of 2 city blocks, but housed an estimated 33,000 people, making it the most densely populated urban area in recorded history. It was originally built as a Chinese military fort in the 1800s. The area became a political anomaly after Hong Kong was ceded to Britain in 1898. This legal gray zone turned into a haven for unregulated construction. Buildings were stacked haphazardly. The interlocked mass of concrete towers, 14 stories high, all touching with no formal streets or open spaces. The interior was a maze of corridors barely a meter wide, lit by fluorescent tubes strung overhead. Apartments, factories, dentists, noodle shops, and even schools operated inside, and electricity was pirated from the surrounding grid. Despite the lawless reputation, triads operated there. The community was largely self-organized, with strong social networks and informal governance. The strangeness of this block is not in its illegality, but its success as a functioning city within a city. Every cubic meter was used. Every inch of wall, roof, and passageway had a purpose. Urban planners today continue to study it as a case of extreme density and spontaneous order. It's proof that even chaos can sustain human life when necessity forces invention. Number 10. The Venice Ghetto block in Italy. In the Cannaregio district of Venice is one of the most historically peculiar city blocks in Europe, the Venice Ghetto. Established in 1516, it was the world's first officially designated ghetto, and its design still has the conditions that made it so strange. The block occupies a small island enclosed by canals, accessible only by 2 bridges that were locked at night to confine the residents inside. Because the Jewish population was restricted to this small area, buildings were forced to grow upwards rather than outwards. The result was some of the tallest residential structures in Renaissance Venice, reaching 6 or 7 stories, which was remarkably high for the 16th century. These cramped vertical apartments stacked families on top of one another in spaces that were originally built for metal foundries. In fact, the word ghetto comes from ghetto, the Venetian term for foundry. Unlike most parts of Venice, the Ghetto's block had almost no open squares. Narrow lanes and small courtyards did create a sense of vertical compression, and the bridges leading to the block were originally guarded, ensuring that the Jews could not leave between sunset and sunrise, a restriction that lasted for centuries until Napoleon abolished the Ghetto in 1797. Today, the Venice Ghetto still exists as a living neighborhood, with kosher bakeries, synagogues, and small museums. This single block tells the story of how physical space can encode centuries of segregation and cultural endurance. It makes it one of the most historically charged city blocks in the world. Number 9. The Barbican Estate block in England. Central London, the Barbican Estate. It occupies a series of blocks that are unlike anything else in the city. These massive concrete terraces, elevated walkways, and towers that together form one of the most complex urban experiments of the 20th century. Built between 1965 and 1976 on the ruins of bombed-out World War II neighborhoods, the Barbican block was intended to reimagine urban living in the post-war era. The main blocks form a self-contained environment complete with apartments, schools, a church, gardens, and one of London's largest art centers, all woven together by elevated pedestrian paths called high walks. These walkways connect different buildings several stories above the ground, which allow the people to navigate the estate without really ever touching the street. It's both connected and detached. Public spaces exist inside, but entrances are difficult to find, giving the impression of a private city within a city. The concrete towers, Cromwell, Shakespeare, and Lauderdale, rise above the rest of the complex, and they form a skyline that seems both futuristic and archaic at the same time. Its strange beauty is in its totality. It's not a collection of buildings, but like an entire ecosystem that was designed around controlled isolation. Even sound behaves differently within the walls. Noise from the surrounding traffic fades as you step into the interior, replaced by the echo of water from the reflecting pools below. From the air, it looks like a geometric puzzle of terraces, gardens, and towers arranged in near symmetry, in contrast to London's otherwise organic street plan. Today, it's protected as a Grade 2 listed site. It's a reminder that even within one of the oldest cities on Earth, modernism could carve out a completely different vision of urban life, one where the city feels more like a labyrinth than a neighborhood. Number 8. Diagonal Mar block in Spain. Barcelona is known for its orderly grid. The perfect geometry of octagonal blocks is among the most recognizable layouts in the world. But on the city's northeastern edge, the Diagonal Mar development breaks every rule of that system. It was built during the late 1990s and early 2000s as part of Barcelona's post-Olympic revival. The Diagonal Mar block is a futuristic anomaly. It's a cluster of curving glass wall residential towers, commercial centers, and landscaped spaces that disregard the city's street pattern. Instead of adhering to the grid, Diagonal Mar was designed as a self-contained district, fluid with its own internal street logic. The road winds in arcs rather than straight lines, and the towers are oriented to maximize sea views instead of aligning with the traditional north-south orientation. The result is a block that feels detached from the rest of the city. At the heart of the development is Park Diagonal Mar, a public space with one of the strangest landscapes. The park replaces traditional gardens with industrial-inspired forms, metal pipes shaped like vines, reflective pools, and looping walkways. It kind of looks like a sculpture park disguised as a city block. But the area has some of Barcelona's most expensive apartments, and it borders working-class neighborhoods from the city's industrial past, and that juxtaposition, the luxury towers overlooking old factories, creates a visually jarring transition. And from above, Diagonal Mar looks alien compared to the surrounding grid, a cluster of curved glass shapes. Critics have called it sterile or disconnected, while others praise it as a necessary experiment in 21st century living. Either way, this single block of Barcelona represents a break from its historic rhythm, a neighborhood that seems designed for another city altogether. Moving on to number 7, the Shibuya Scramble block in Japan. The Shibuya district is one of the most chaotic yet precisely organized city blocks on Earth. The Shibuya Scramble crossing is a single intersection surrounded by towering screens, glass buildings, and underground shopping centers. Up to 3,000 people cross the intersection every time the light turns green, but what makes it so strange is how flawlessly this organized chaos functions. Unlike most intersections, all pedestrian lights turn green at once, allowing the people to cross in every direction, including diagonally. The result is a brief, perfectly synchronized moment where the entire block becomes a web of human motion. The Tsutaya building with Starbucks overlooking the intersection and the station complex, one of Tokyo's busiest railway hubs. At night, this whole scene transforms into an electric theater. Gigantic LED billboards light up every surface, reflecting off the glass towers and turning the entire block into a luminous spectacle. It is one of the most filmed, photographed, and commercialized spaces in the entire world, yet it also functions as an everyday commuter route. Locals cross it without hesitation, barely noticing what tourists find mesmerizing. It is engineered choreography that turns a single Tokyo city block into an urban synchronization symbol, its organized chaos functioning with perfect grace. Number 6. Superkilen Block in Denmark. In Copenhagen is a city block that looks more like a contemporary art installation than a neighborhood. Superkilen Park, completed in 2012. It occupies a long, irregularly shaped block that cuts through one of the most ethnically diverse areas in Denmark. Each section of the block incorporates objects and symbols donated or inspired by the over 60 nationalities that live nearby. It's divided into 3 distinct zones: the Red Square, the Black Market, and the Green Park. The Red Square is crimson-colored public space for sports and gatherings. The Black Market is paved in wavy black and white stripes and serves as a social plaza. And the Green Park features grassy areas and playgrounds. Together they form one continuous block-long corridor that feels like 3 different worlds. This approach has made Superkilen a favorite case study among urban planners. It breaks the idea that the city blocks have to conform to a single style or nationality. Instead, it presents urban designs as a visual conversation among cultures. From the air, the block's red, black, and green sections are clearly visible. It's an unmistakable fingerprint of color and form within an otherwise traditional city. Yet, despite the unconventional look, it functions just like an ordinary neighborhood. People jog, skateboard, walk dogs, and gather around picnic tables just like in any other park. Its strangeness isn't in its function, but in its philosophy, embracing chaos and color as the defining language of a modern city block. Number 5. The Fremont Troll block in Seattle. Underneath the north end of the Aurora Bridge in Seattle's Fremont neighborhood is a city block that defies expectations. Instead of shops, houses, or offices, this block is home to a concrete sculpture known as the Fremont Troll, a 5.5-meter high creature clutching an actual Volkswagen Beetle in one of its hands. It was built in the 1990s by a group of local artists led by Steve Bedanes, and the Troll was part of the community effort there to reclaim the area beneath the bridge, what had become a neglected, crime-prone space. The strange sculpture was inspired by the Norwegian folk tale Three Billy Goats Gruff, where the troll lives under a bridge. But rather than a storybook creature, the Fremont Troll looks raw and industrial, with one shiny metal eye made from a hubcap and rough concrete skin. By placing the troll there, the artist gave the block an identity that's equal parts eerie and playful. Over time, it became one of Seattle's most visited attractions, turning what was once an unused patch of concrete into a symbol of the neighborhood's creativity. The block layout is simple. It's a steep incline leading up to the bridge's base, surrounded by a few small residential streets. The sculpture completely changes the meaning, though. Locals host Halloween gatherings there, and the troll's hand clutching the car is often repainted or decorated by the community. What could have remained a lifeless underpass instead becomes a focal point that connects the neighborhood. The city even designated the area an official park called Troll's Knoll, maintaining it as a public space and a tourist destination. Seen from above, it looks ordinary, but it is one of the strangest city blocks in America, where myth and art merge into one concrete creature that quite literally holds up part of the city. Number 4. Bofill Walden 7 block, Spain. On the western edge of Barcelona is one of the strangest visually disorienting city blocks ever built, Walden 7. To some, it kinda looks like a futuristic fortress. To others, it's a geometric labyrinth. But whatever the interpretation, this single block defies almost every conventional rule of urban architecture. It was completed in 1975 as a radical experiment in reimagining how people could live together in a dense urban environment. It occupies a single city block, yet it contains nearly 450 apartments arranged vertically through a maze of courtyards and corridors. The design was part of a broader social movement in post-Franco Spain when architects were searching for new ways to express freedom and creativity after decades of authoritarian urban control. The structure is composed of 18 interlocking towers of varying heights. The towers are hollowed out in the center, creating 5 open-air courtyards that reach from the ground to the sky. And bridges and walkways crisscross above the courtyards at different levels, connecting apartments like pathways in a vertical village. At first, the whole thing seemed to work. The building's design encouraged people to encounter one another constantly, walking to their homes, passing along the terraces, meeting in the courtyards. But the same qualities that made it socially ambitious made it difficult to live in. Visitors often got lost, and even residents occasionally found themselves on the wrong level. The apartments themselves varied in size and shape, some spanning multiple levels, others squeezed into tight corners dictated by the building's geometry. The building was not without its problems, obviously. When residents began moving in, they discovered significant defects. Water leaked through the walls, concrete was deteriorating, and the plumbing and electrical systems were unreliable. The Spanish economic crisis of the late 1970s compounded the issues, leaving many apartments unfinished or abandoned. In the 1990s, a major restoration effort started. The government and private investors funded a rehabilitation project to repair any structural issues, and during it, architects realized despite its flaws, the building had achieved something remarkable. It created a functioning community inside a structure that was supposed to be too dense, too experimental, and too eccentric to work. Over time, this eccentricity has earned it cult status among architects and urban theorists. Despite its age and imperfections, it continues to function as a residential community, home to hundreds of people who describe it as both bewildering and inspiring. Half a century after its completion, it remains one of the most daring statements in Europe. It's a living relic of the era when architects believed that concrete could shape not only cities, but society. It's kind of like a city block that's alive. It grows, decays, and renews itself through the lives of those who live there. It's confusing, disorienting, and breathtaking all at once. A physical manifestation of an idea that cities can be more than just grids of efficiency. They can be worlds within worlds. Number 3. Rocinha Block in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. In the hills of Rio de Janeiro, one of the most peculiar city blocks on the planet, not because of a single building or a planned design, but because of how thousands of dwellings have fused together into one living organism of concrete. Rocinha, the largest favela in Brazil, is technically not one block in the conventional sense, yet in its urban form, certain sections of it function almost exactly that way. The population is estimated to be between 70 to 100,000 people, lives on land that was once too steep for formal development. From above, it's like a living texture rather than a mapped neighborhood, and one particular section, around Estrada de Gavea, has become the defining example of a favela block, a labyrinth of stacked dwellings each built independently but collectively forming a structure. At street level, Rocinha's main arteries are abuzz. Small grocery stalls, hair salons, repair shops, and food stands occupy the lowest floors, while families live directly above their businesses. Goods move through informal delivery routes, water tanks and power cables are all shared, and neighbors rely on each other for both safety and survival. Unlike many slums around the world, this one has achieved some unusual level of infrastructure. It's got banks, schools, a samba club, and even a small cinema. In reality, though, the single dense block does represent a form of adaptive resilience that's rarely seen in formal cities. The block in Rocinha is not a physical boundary, it's a social one. The buildings grow organically, follow the contours of the hill, and it results in vertical angles and slopes that defy conventional geometry. From an aerial perspective, it's kind of mesmerizing. The density appears absolute, roofs touching roofs, forming a single undulating mass of brick and concrete. In some places, it's 11 or 12 stories high, though no building was ever engineered to that height. In recent years, researchers have studied it as a model of emergent urbanism. The idea is that even in the absence of government controls, cities can organize themselves through the collective behavior of individuals. Whether that means rerouting power lines, rebuilding after landslides, or extending homes to fit new generations. The same density that fosters community does also make it vulnerable. Fires, floods, and landslides pose constant risks, and emergency services struggle to reach certain areas. Despite partial efforts at urban integration, Rocinha remains technically informal. It exists in sort of a legal gray area, much like Kowloon walled city once did. However, unlike Kowloon, Rocinha is still expanding. But what makes this so fascinating is how it mirrors the rest of Rio's contradictions. From its rooftops, residents can see luxury condominiums and the ocean beyond, a few hundred meters separating extreme wealth from extreme poverty. Seen from above, it's a huge mosaic of colors and textures, constantly shifting as residents paint, rebuild, and extend their homes. It's alive in a way that no static city grid could ever be. Each path tells a story of migration and survival. If a city block is defined by how completely it contains human life, then Rocinha is perhaps the ultimate example. It's a labyrinth without architects, sustained without planners, and governed without officials. It's a self-built metropolis wrapped inside a single hillside block. And in that chaos lies an unexpected order, one that tells us more about the essence of cities than most planned neighborhoods ever could. Number 2. Baori Stepwell Block in India. In the small village of Abhaneri in Rajasthan, in India, there exists a city block so strange and hypnotic it looks more like a mathematical illusion than a human construction. It's known as the Baori. This ancient stepwell occupies roughly a square block of land, about 35 meters on each side, and descends down 13 stories into the ground. It was built over 1,000 years ago, likely between the 8th and 9th centuries during the reign of King Chanda of the Nikumba dynasty. And at first glance, it seems endless. Over 3,500 narrow steps form a lattice of perfect triangles that descend down towards the dark green pool at the bottom. The design is utilitarian and symbolic. It provided essential water during periods of drought, but it also represented a sacred connection between earth and water in Hindu cosmology. Instead of rising upward like a building, this one descends into the ground. It consumes vertical space beneath it, and the structure functions as architecture and void. People gathered on its steps to collect water, wash clothes, and escape the heat. Pilgrims visited it, dedicated to the goddess of joy and happiness, whose presence symbolically blessed the well, and over the centuries the site became more than just infrastructure. It became the heart of the community, built into the literal foundation of the village. Architecturally, Baori belongs to a broader tradition of stepwells, but none match its size or complexity. Scholars estimate that more than 3,000 stepwells once dotted western India, though many have collapsed or been filled in over time. Today it attracts architects, mathematicians, and artists from around the world. The play of light and shadow across the steps changes constantly throughout the day, producing patterns that look digital in their precision. Filmmakers even use the site as a setting for science fiction and mystery, most famously in scenes from The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. And yet for the people here, it remains something practical, a place that once ensured life in the desert. When viewed from above, the pattern resembles a geometric engraving that was carved into the planet. It's a work of art made from function. Yet it reverses all expectations about what a block is supposed to be, literally drawing the community downward towards the water that sustains it. Number 1. Times Square, New York City. Few places in the world condense as much movement, light, and sound and spectacle into a single block as Times Square. It's located at the intersection of Broadway and 7th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. Times Square is more than just a location. It's a living organism that pulses day and night. Yet beneath its global image as an entertainment hub is a city block that, by design and evolution, is one of the strangest pieces of urban real estate on Earth. Times Square began as Longacres Square, a relatively quiet district of carriage manufacturers and horse stables in the late 19th century. Its transformation began in 1904, when the New York Times built its headquarters at 1 Times Square, at the very center of the triangular intersection where Broadway cuts diagonally through the Manhattan grid. That same year, the first subway line opened directly beneath it, instantly making the area one of the most accessible points in the city. Within a few years, the combination of transit, media, and advertising created a self-sustaining feedback loop that turned this single block into the symbolic heart of modern New York. Where it meets 7th Avenue, the collision creates a series of sharp-angled blocks, neither square nor rectangular, that forces buildings to adapt to the irregular footprint. The most famous of these is the narrow triangular block that holds 1 Times Square, where the New Year's Eve ball drops each year. The shape of the block is so acute that the building's southern tip measures less than 10 feet wide. Zoning laws here enacted in the 1980s and 90s required large-scale illuminated advertising on building facades to preserve the area's identity. In other words, Times Square's defining feature, its glowing lights, is not just cultural, it's legal, ensuring that even if ownership or architecture changes, the chaos of this light remains constant. From ground level, the block is overwhelming. Billboards tower over your head, digital screens flash at every angle, and streams of pedestrians move in every direction. More than 300,000 people pass through this area each day, and on New Year's Eve, that number exceeds 1 million. But beneath all the spectacle, Times Square functions as a system of urban control. The pedestrian plazas, first introduced in 2009, were part of a major redesign that permanently closed portions of Broadway to car traffic. What began as an experiment temporarily blocking traffic with painted lanes and folding chairs proved so successful that it became permanent. The city measured a 35% drop in pedestrian injuries and a 63% reduction in traffic collisions. But all this strangeness isn't limited to traffic patterns or signage. Times Square's economy operates almost as its own microcosm. Property values here are among the highest in the world, yet few people actually live within the block. The digital screens that dominate the square are leased by the minute, creating an economy where the physical buildings serve primarily as support structures for the glowing signs. In this sense, Times Square is less a place than a broadcast, an urban billboard that never turns off. But the energy of the block also concealed a darker history. In the 1970s and 80s, Times Square was infamous for crime, adult theaters, and urban decay. The glittering facades of today sit atop what was once one of the most dangerous districts in the city. Its revitalization in the 1990s under Mayor Giuliani involved large-scale policing, rezoning, and redevelopment. The result was both a success and a controversy. Times Square became safer and more profitable, but critics argue it lost its cultural grit and authenticity. From above, Times Square looks oddly small, just a few triangular intersections surrounded by towers. Yet on the ground, it feels infinite, as if space itself expands under the weight of light and sound. That perceptual distortion is what makes it unique. It's not the size of the block that matters, but how much sensory information it contains.